I'm Olivia Johnson, 32, and literally last Christmas, my rep as the family's secret benefactor? Yeah, it totally backfired. The empire I'd worked my butt off to build through my graphic design studio, it blew up into a full-on family meltdown at our so-called joyful Christmas dinner. My mother, the queen of cutting remarks, straight up demanded I admit I'd never amount to anything, and when I clapped back, the room went dead silent. "You just ruined us," she screamed, with my siblings staring like I'd set the table on fire. But here's the tea. Their shade didn't break me. It lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. A quick note, this story is copyrighted by the YouTube channel Guest Stories. Reposting, revoicing, or editing this content without permission constitutes copyright infringement. Thank you for respecting original creative work. Now, back to the story. The dining room smelled of roasted turkey and pine from the over-decorated tree, but the warmth was a lie. I sat at the far end of the table, my usual spot, closest to the kitchen, furthest from respect. My mother, Patricia, presided at the head, her silver hair pinned tightly, her smile sharp as a blade. My older brother Ethan, the lawyer with a corner office, was to her right, sipping wine like he owned the world. My sister Claire, the perfect pediatrician, sat to her left, her pearl earrings glinting as she laughed at some private joke with Mom. My younger brother Nate, the budding entrepreneur who never met a bad investment, slouched across from me, scrolling his phone. And me? Olivia, the artsy one, the one who dabbles in graphic design, the one who's been footing their bills for years without a single thank you. I adjusted my napkin, smoothing it over my lap, my fingers lingering on the soft linen to keep from clenching into fists. Mom's voice cut through the clinking of silverware. "Olivia, dear, still playing with your little drawings?" Her tone was syrupy, but her eyes were cold, daring me to challenge her. I forced a smile, my teeth gritted. "It's a business, Mom, a successful one." She raised an eyebrow, dismissing me with a flick of her wrist. "Well, it's nice you have a hobby." Ethan smirked, and Claire's lips twitched, her gaze sliding away. Nate didn't even look up. My chest tightened, but I swallowed the hurt. I'd spent years swallowing it. Ever since I was a kid, I was the odd one out, the dreamer in a family of doers. Ethan's law degree was framed in gold, Claire's medical awards lined the hallway. Nate, well, he was the baby, so his every idea was genius. Me, I was the one who wasted her potential on art. Never mind that my studio, Pixel Pulse, was pulling in 6 figures a year, that I'd built it from a laptop in my tiny apartment. Never mind that I'd been quietly bailing them out. Ethan's mortgage, Claire's student loans, Nate's endless startups, even Mom's car payments. They didn't know. I made sure of it. Why? Because I thought it would prove something. That I could be the glue, the one who held us together, despite their disdain. I'd send the money anonymously, through wire transfers labeled consulting fees or investment returns. I'd watch them spend it, Ethan's new suits, Claire's fancy vacations, Mom's endless charity galas, while they called me the most useless child. I thought if I kept giving they'd see me. Really see me. But that night, as Mom's words landed like a slap, I realized they never would. Not unless I made them. The dinner dragged on, each course a fresh chance for jabs. "Olivia, when are you going to get a real job?" Ethan asked, cutting his turkey with surgical precision. "Maybe you could work for me," Nate chimed in, finally looking up from his phone. "You know, make some logos for my next pitch." Claire didn't bother with words. Her pitying glance was enough. I gripped my fork, the metal biting into my palm. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from my studio manager about a massive client deal we were finalizing. I ignored it, but it was a reminder. I wasn't who they thought I was. I was more. By the time dessert was served, my patience was a fraying thread. Mom leaned forward, her voice low and deliberate. "Olivia, you've always been different. It's time you accepted your place." My place. The words echoed, each one a brick in the wall they'd built around me. I set my fork down, my hands trembling. I could feel it, the spark igniting into something hotter, something dangerous. I wasn't going to stay silent. Not this time. Those words, "your place," hung in the air like smoke, thick and choking. I stared at my plate, the half-eaten slice of pecan pie blurring as memories flooded in, unbidden but insistent. It wasn't the first time Mom had drawn that line, marking me as the outsider. No, this went back years, to moments that had piled up like unpaid bills, each one reminding me I didn't fit the family mold. As the clatter of forks around the table faded into background noise, my mind slipped back to one particular evening that captured it all. The night of Ethan's law school graduation party, 7 years ago. That was when the invisibility really set in, not as a vague feeling, but as a sharp, defining truth. The house had been alive that night, strung with lights and filled with the hum of congratulations. Ethan stood in the center of the living room, his cap and gown draped over a chair, accepting handshakes from Dad's old colleagues and Mom's bridge club friends. I remember the way he held his diploma like a trophy, his chest puffed out, that smug grin plastered on his face. "To the future partner at Hargrove and Associates," Mom toasted, her glass raised high, her voice booming with pride. Everyone cheered, clinking glasses, while Claire patted his back, whispering something that made him laugh. Nate, still in high school then, idolized him, trailing behind like a puppy, asking about court cases and big wins. I hovered near the buffet table, picking at cheese cubes, my own news burning in my pocket. I'd just landed my first major freelance gig, a branding project for a local startup that paid enough to cover my rent for months. It was a breakthrough, proof that my graphic design degree wasn't the waste they'd called it. I'd spent weeks on the portfolio, tweaking colors and fonts until my eyes ached, and when the client emailed, "You're hired," I danced around my apartment alone. I thought, maybe this time they'd see me. As the crowd thinned, I approached Mom in the kitchen where she was stacking plates, her apron tied neatly. "Hey Mom," I said, my voice tentative, holding out my phone with the email open. "I got this big project today, it's for..." She glanced over, her hands pausing mid-wipe on a dish towel. "Oh, that's nice, dear, but tonight's about Ethan. Let's not steal his thunder." She turned back to the sink, the water running loud, drowning out any chance for more. My stomach twisted, but I nodded, slipping the phone away. Nice, that's all it was. Nice. Not groundbreaking, not worthy of a toast. Ethan caught me later, lounging on the couch with a beer. "What's up, Liv? You look like you swallowed a lemon." I forced a smile, sitting beside him. "Just excited for you. And, I got a job today, too. Designing logos and stuff for this company." He chuckled, ruffling my hair like I was a kid. "Cool, sis, keep at it. Maybe one day you'll have a real office like mine." His words landed soft, but they stung, implying my work was play pretend. I shifted away, my fingers digging into the couch cushion, nails scraping the fabric. Claire wandered in then, her med school scrubs swapped for a dress, and the conversation pivoted to her latest rotation. "Saving lives already," Ethan teased, and they both laughed, leaving me on the edge, literally and figuratively. It didn't stop there. The party dragged on, and as guests mingled, I overheard snippets that carved deeper. One of Dad's friends asked about me. "What's Olivia up to these days?" Mom's reply was quick, dismissive. "Oh, she's into art. Nothing serious." Nothing serious. I stood frozen in the hallway, my back against the wall, feeling the cool paint through my shirt. My cheeks burned, but I didn't correct her. Instead, I retreated to the backyard, sitting on the swing set we'd outgrown, kicking at the grass. The stars were out, indifferent, and I wondered why I kept trying. Why I cared so much about their approval when it never came. But that night wasn't isolated. It echoed others, building the pattern. Like Claire's white coat ceremony a couple years earlier, the whole family drove to her med school, cameras flashing as she slipped on that crisp white coat. "Our little doctor," Dad beamed, hugging her tight. I was there too, clapping along, but when I mentioned my acceptance into a prestigious design program, Nate snorted. "Design? Like drawing pictures?" Mom shushed him, but her eyes said the same. No hug for me, no proud announcement, just a pat on the shoulder. "That's good, Olivia. Focus on something stable, though." Or Nate's high school graduation when he announced his business ideas. Mom funded his first venture, a t-shirt printing side hustle, without question, even though it flopped in months. My suggestions? Ignored. "You wouldn't understand real business," he'd say, waving me off. Each time I'd swallow the bitterness, channeling it into my work. Late nights, sketching, building my portfolio, proving to myself what they wouldn't acknowledge. Back at the Christmas table, the memories snapped me to the present. Mom's eyes were still on me, waiting for submission. My hands steadied, the tremble gone. Those years of invisibility, they weren't just history, they were fuel. I wasn't different, I was done. The spark flared brighter, ready to burn through the facade. The facade they'd built around me, around us, felt brittle now, like cracked porcelain ready to shatter under the slightest pressure. As Mom's gaze bored into me, expecting me to fold as always, my mind raced back not to more slights but to the turning point. The night I decided enough was enough and channeled all that pain into something real, something mine. It was 5 years ago, a rainy Tuesday in my cramped studio apartment. The kind where the kitchenette bled into the living room, and the window overlooked a brick wall. I'd just come home from another family gathering, Ethan's promotion dinner, where my attempts to share a small win, a client logo I'd designed that went viral, were met with polite nods and quick topic changes. "That's cute, Liv," Claire had said, before diving into her latest hospital drama. I slammed the door behind me that night, my coat dripping onto the floor, and collapsed onto the futon, my laptop balanced on my knees. That's when the aha hit, not as a gentle whisper, but as a roar in my chest. If they wouldn't see me, I'd build something so big they couldn't ignore it. But I'd do it in secret, on my terms, without their validation or their poison. I remember staring at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keys, heart pounding like I'd just run a marathon. The idea for Pixel Pulse had been simmering for months. A graphic design studio focused on bold, innovative branding for startups and creatives. No more freelance gigs scraped together. This would be a full business with clients, a website, maybe even employees one day. But starting meant risking everything. I had a day job then, waitressing at a cafe to pay bills. My design work squeezed into stolen hours. Quitting wasn't an option. I needed stability, or so I told myself. That night, though, stability felt like a cage. I opened a new document and typed out a business plan, crude at first. Target market, services, pricing. My hands shook as I sketched logos on a notepad, tearing pages when they weren't perfect, crumpling them into balls that littered the floor like fallen leaves. The next morning, eyes gritty from lack of sleep, I didn't back down. I spent my lunch break at the cafe registering the domain name, pixelpulsedesign.com, using my tips to cover the fee. It felt illicit, like sneaking out after curfew. I set up a separate bank account, one they didn't know about, and funneled every spare dollar into it. Evenings blurred into nights. I'd come home smelling of coffee grounds, kick off my shoes, and dive in. Building the website was the first real hurdle. I taught myself code through free online tutorials, my cursor blinking accusingly as errors popped up. Syntax error, the screen mocked, and I'd rub my temples, whispering, "Come on, Olivia, figure it out." One night, around 2 a.m., I finally got the homepage live. Clean lines, vibrant colors, a portfolio of my best freelance pieces. I hit refresh obsessively, watching the analytics tick up from 0 visitors. But the struggle intensified. Landing clients meant cold emailing hundreds of businesses, my fingers cramping from typing personalized pitches. Rejections piled up in my inbox. Not interested, budget too tight, or worse, silence. I paced the apartment during calls, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "Hi, this is Olivia from Pixel Pulse. I saw your site could use a refresh." Click. Hang up. I'd sink to the floor, back against the wall, doubting everything. Was this stupid? Was I proving them right? But then a nibble, a small bakery, needing a menu redesign. I undercharged, desperate for the win, and poured hours into it, adjusting fonts pixel by pixel until the owner emailed back, "Love it." That $200 check felt like $1,000,000. I deposited it quietly, watching the balance grow. Momentum built slowly, painfully. I juggled the cafe shifts with late-night revisions, my eyes burning from the screen glare. Sleep became a luxury. I'd nod off at the keyboard, waking to drool-smudged keys. Physically, it wore me down. My back ached from hunching over the laptop, fingers calloused from endless mouse clicks. I skipped meals, surviving on ramen and energy drinks, my reflection in the mirror showing dark circles and hollow cheeks. Emotionally, it was a battlefield. Doubts crept in during quiet moments. What if it fails? What if they find out and laugh? But I pushed back, taping affirmations to the wall. "You are capable. Build your empire," ripping them down in frustration only to replace them. Triumphs came in waves, each one a brick in the foundation. A tech startup hired me for a full rebrand, paying enough to quit the cafe. I remember the day I gave notice, my manager's surprised look as I handed in my apron, folded neatly. "Going solo," I said, my voice firm. "Free now," I expanded. Hired a virtual assistant for admin, then a junior designer. Revenue climbed, $50K the first year, doubling the next. I moved to a real office space, a loft with exposed bricks and big windows, the kind I dreamed of. Clients raved. One campaign I designed went national, featured in design magazines I subscribed to anonymously. Yet, the secrecy added layers of isolation. I couldn't share wins with anyone, especially not family. At gatherings, I'd nod through their stories, my phone buzzing with client approvals I ignored. And then, the financial support started. It began small. Ethan mentioned struggling with bills after a bad case. I wired money through a fake bonus account. Claire's loans loomed. I paid chunks anonymously. Nate's ventures tanked. I bailed him out. Mom's retirement dipped. I covered it. Hundreds turned to thousands, then tens of thousands, all while they dismissed me. It was my quiet revenge, but also my chain, keeping me tied to their approval. By year 4, Pixel Pulse was massive. 7 employees, international clients, awards I accepted via video to stay hidden. I sat in boardrooms, negotiating deals, my confidence forged in those lonely nights. But success tasted bittersweet without acknowledgement. That Christmas Eve, as I prepped for dinner, the studio's latest coup, a merger offer worth millions, sat in my email. I glanced at it, fingers tracing the screen, knowing this was the peak of what I'd built alone. Back at the table, the spark was aflame now, licking at the edges of my restraint. Mom's words echoed, but so did my victories. I wasn't invisible, I was invincible. Invincible. That word pulsed through me like a heartbeat, steady and strong, as I sat there at the table. But wait, no, that flame wasn't fully ignited yet. It started earlier, on Christmas Eve, in the quiet of my loft apartment, where the city lights twinkled outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, mocking the storm brewing inside me. Pixel Pulse had just hit its stride, the merger offer from a major tech firm glowing on my laptop screen like a beacon. I paced the hardwood floors, my bare feet silent on the polished surface, stopping every few steps to reread the email. "We'd like to acquire your studio for $5 million, it said, detailing synergies and growth potential. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the desk, nails digging into the wood grain. This was it, the validation I'd craved, not from family, but from the world. Yet, as I prepared for the annual family dinner the next day, that excitement twisted into dread. A heavy weight in my gut that made every movement feel labored. I glanced at the clock. 4 p.m. The dinner was tomorrow, but Mom expected perfection, and I'd volunteered, stupidly, to bring the appetizers. It was my way of contributing, of proving I wasn't useless even if they never noticed. I moved to the kitchen, a sleek space with granite counters and stainless steel appliances I'd bought with my first big client payout. Opening the fridge, I pulled out ingredients: fresh shrimp, avocados, lime, cilantro. My fingers worked automatically, peeling the shrimp under cold water, the shells cracking softly, piling up in the sink like discarded armor. Each peel reminded me of shedding my own layers over the years, only to be met with indifference. "Why do I keep doing this?" I muttered to myself, the words echoing off the empty walls. The apartment was too quiet, too big for one person, a far cry from the tiny space where I'd started. Success had given me this, but it couldn't fill the silence. As I chopped the cilantro, the sharp scent filling the air, my phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Claire. "Don't forget the wine, Mom likes red." "No hello, no how are you. Just orders." I set the knife down, wiping my hands on a towel, feeling the rough fabric against my skin. My thumb hovered over the reply button, but I locked the screen instead, shoving the phone away. Why did I let them dictate? The merger email stared back from the open laptop across the room. I walked over, scrolling through the details again, non-compete clauses, transition plans. It meant freedom, financial independence, beyond what I'd already built, enough to never need anyone's approval. But tomorrow, I'd walk into that house, appetizers in hand, and pretend none of it existed. Hide the empire, swallow the slights. I resumed chopping, the knife thudding rhythmically against the cutting board, each slice a release of frustration. Juice from the lime squirted onto my fingers, stinging a small cut, and I winced, sucking in a breath. The pain was minor, but it mirrored the deeper ache, the reluctance gnawing at me. Every year the dinner was the same: arrive early, help set the table, endure the questions. "Still single, Olivia? When are you settling down?" Never about my work, unless to mock it. I mixed the shrimp with avocado, my movements precise, folding in the ingredients gently to avoid mushing them. The bowl grew full, vibrant greens and pinks, a visual feast I'd designed like one of my graphics. Balanced, appealing. Would they even taste it or just push it around their plates while praising Claire's store-bought dessert? Setting the bowl aside to chill, I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, staring out the window. Snow flurried lightly, coating the streets below in white. My reflection stared back, determined eyes framed by loose waves of hair I'd forgotten to brush. At 32, I looked put together, tailored jeans, a simple sweater, but inside, the girl who'd been labeled useless still lingered. The merger could change that. I could announce it tomorrow, watch their jaws drop, but no, not yet. The secrecy was my shield, and revealing it prematurely would invite their greed, not respect. I uncrossed my arms, rubbing my temples, the pressure building like a headache. To distract myself, I checked work emails, one from my lead designer confirming mock-ups for a new client. "Boss, these are killer," it read. I smiled faintly, typing a quick thumbs up. That word boss still thrilled me, a reminder of how far I'd come. But as I closed the laptop, the dread resurfaced. I moved to the closet, pulling out my outfit for tomorrow. A red blouse, black slacks, low heels. Festive but professional, nothing too flashy to draw comments. Ironing the blouse, the steam rising hot against my face, I practiced responses in my head. "Yes, Mom, the design thing is going fine." "No, Ethan, I don't need career advice." The iron hissed over the fabric, smoothing wrinkles, but my thoughts stayed creased. By evening, the appetizers were prepped, wrapped in foil and tucked in the fridge. I poured a glass of wine, the red Mom liked, ironically, and sat on the couch, legs curled under me. The merger contract attachment tempted me. I opened it, scanning legalese, my free hand twisting a strand of hair. This deal was life-changing, stock options, a role in the larger firm if I wanted. Excitement bubbled, but so did anxiety about the dinner. What if they pushed too far this time? My fingers tightened on the glass stem, the cool surface grounding me. I sipped slowly, the tartness coating my tongue, wondering if I should skip the gathering altogether, but no, family was family, or so I'd been taught. Plus, a part of me still hoped, foolishly, for a shift, for them to see me without forcing it. As night fell, I set the wine down half-finished, and headed to bed, the sheets cool against my skin. Lying there, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin, I replayed past dinners, the backhanded compliments, the exclusions. Tomorrow would be no different, but with the merger looming, I felt a shift, a readiness to break free. Sleep came fitfully, dreams of shattering glass and falling facades. Morning light filtered in, and I rose, brewing coffee, the aroma strong and bitter. I dressed methodically, buttoning the blouse with steady hands, applying minimal makeup to hide the fatigue. Grabbing the appetizers and wine, I locked the door, the click final. In the car, heat blasting against the winter chill, I drove to their house, the merger email forwarded to my phone for safekeeping. Bracing for judgments, hiding the thrill of the deal, I pulled into the driveway. The flame flickering, waiting. The flame flickered brighter as I stepped out of the car, the cold air slapping my face like a warning, carrying the scent of wood smoke from the chimney. I grabbed the foil-wrapped tray of appetizers from the passenger seat, balancing it carefully in one hand while clutching the bottle of red wine in the other. The driveway crunch was familiar under my heels, each step crunching gravel that seemed louder than usual, echoing my mounting tension. The house loomed ahead, its windows glowing warmly with holiday lights strung along the eaves, but I knew the warmth stopped at the glass. I paused at the door, adjusting the tray to free a hand, my fingers numb from the chill despite the gloves I'd slipped on during the drive. Knocking felt formal, but ringing the bell seemed too cheerful for what awaited. I opted for the knob, turning it slowly, the metal icy against my palm, and pushed inside. The entryway hit me with a rush of heated air, laced with cinnamon from simmering potpourri on the stove. "Olivia's here," Nate's voice called from the living room, casual but laced with that undercurrent of mockery he'd perfected. I kicked off my shoes, lining them neatly by the mat, Mom hated clutter, and hung my coat on the rack, the hanger clinking softly. Smoothing my blouse, I took a breath, steeling myself, then carried the tray toward the kitchen. Mom was there, stirring something on the stove, her back to me, apron tied in a perfect bow. She turned at my footsteps, her eyes flicking over me appraisingly. "You're late," she said, not harshly, but with that edge that implied disappointment. I glanced at the clock. 5:05 p.m., 5 minutes past the suggested arrival. "Traffic," I murmured, setting the tray on the counter, peeling back the foil to reveal the shrimp ceviche. The colors popped, pink shrimp against green cilantro, like a design I'd crafted for impact. She poked at it with a fork, lifting a piece to inspect. "Looks interesting. Did you follow a recipe, or is this one of your experiments?" Her tone suggested experiments were frivolous, like my career. I bit my lip, the metallic taste faint, and forced a neutral expression. "It's a standard ceviche, Mom. I think it'll taste good." She set the fork down, wiping her hands on a dish towel folded over her arm. "Well, as long as it's edible. Your father always preferred simple things. Dad had passed 3 years ago, but she invoked him like a shield for her opinions." I nodded, uncorking the wine with a pop that seemed too loud, pouring a glass for her as a peace offering. She took it without thanks, sipping once before setting it aside. "Claire's bringing the pie. She baked it herself, between shifts at the hospital no less." The comparison hung unspoken. Claire the hero, me the afterthought. I escaped to the living room, where Ethan lounged on the recliner, tie loosened, a scotch in hand. Nate sprawled on the couch, thumbs flying over his phone. Claire stood by the fireplace, arranging stockings, her posture perfect as always. "Hey everyone," I said, aiming for brightness. Ethan looked up, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Liv, made it through the snow, huh? Thought you'd bail with one of your deadlines." He air-quoted the word, implying my work was imaginary. I perched on the arm of the couch, crossing my legs to hide the twitch in my knee. "Wouldn't miss it." Nate snorted without looking up. "Yeah, right. Last year you left early for some client call. What was that about, doodling emergencies?" His laugh was sharp, and Claire shot him a mild glance, but her lips curved slightly amused. The barrage built slowly, like drips turning to a downpour. Ethan set his glass down with a clink, leaning forward. "So what's new in the world of graphics? Still freelancing from coffee shops?" he said, freelancing like it was a dirty word, his fingers drumming the armrest. I shifted, feeling the fabric under my thighs. "Actually, it's a studio now. We have offices." He raised an eyebrow. "We? You got imaginary friends working for you?" Nate chuckled again, finally pocketing his phone. "Come on, Ethan, be nice. Liv's probably got a whole team of crayons." I gripped the couch edge, nails sinking in, the padding giving slightly. Claire intervened, sort of. "Ignore them, Olivia. But seriously, have you thought about going back to school? Something practical like marketing? It could tie into your hobby." Her voice was soft, pitying, as she straightened a stocking, her fingers lingering on the embroidered name. Hers, of course. I swallowed, throat dry, and reached for a coaster on the coffee table, tracing its edge to steady myself. "It's not a hobby, Claire. It's a business. We're closing a big deal soon." The words slipped out, a hint of the merger, but I regretted it instantly. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "A deal? Like selling stickers? That's cute." He patted my shoulder as he stood to refill his drink, the touch condescending, like petting a child. My skin crawled, but I didn't pull away. Nate leaned in. "Hey, if you need investors, I could look at it. But only if it's legit, not just pretty pictures." His grin was wolfish, and I knew he'd dismiss it anyway. Mom called from the kitchen. "Dinner in 10. Olivia, set the table." It wasn't a question. I rose, knees stiff, and moved to the dining room, pulling plates from the cabinet with careful clatters. As I laid out the silverware, aligning each fork precisely, the comments echoed in my head, chipping away. Claire wandered in to help, but really to probe. "You look tired, Liv. Is everything okay? Maybe cut back on the late nights drawing." She folded napkins into fans, her movements efficient. "I'm fine," I said, placing a knife down harder than intended, the thud muffled by the tablecloth. "Just busy," she hummed. "Busy is good, but family first, right? Ethan says you haven't called in weeks." Guilt twisted, but I knew the truth. They called only when needing something, like the loans I'd disguised. Ethan poked his head in. "Table looks great, sis. Very artistic. Backhanded, always." Nate yelled from the other room, "Don't forget my spot, useless." The old nickname, thrown casually, landed like a punch. By the time we sat, the air thick with turkey aroma, my composure was fraying. Mom at the head, carving with precise slices. "Olivia, say grace." Another test. I bowed my head, words mechanical, while inside the flame roared. The initial hits had landed, but the night was young. The night was young, but the weight of those opening salvos pressed down like an invisible hand, making each breath a little harder as we passed platters around the table. The turkey steamed in the center, golden and carved into neat slices, but my appetite had vanished, replaced by a churning in my stomach that twisted tighter with every glance exchanged across the polished wood. Mom speared a piece onto her plate, her fork scraping porcelain with a faint screech, then looked up, her eyes locking on mine. "Pass the gravy, Olivia," she said, her voice even, but I caught the undercurrent. A test, always a test. I reached for the boat, my arm steady despite the tremor inside, and handed it over, our fingers brushing briefly. Hers were cool, manicured. Mine felt clammy. Ethan took a bite, chewing slowly, his jaw working methodically as he watched me. "So, Liv," he started, swallowing with a sip of wine, the glass stem twirling in his fingers. "We were talking before you arrived about the future, family stuff." I nodded, forking a small portion of mashed potatoes onto my plate, the steam rising like a veil. "Yeah? What's up?" My voice came out casual, but my free hand clenched under the table, nails digging into my palm, leaving half-moon indents. Claire cleared her throat, dabbing her lips with a napkin, folded precisely. "It's about the estate, actually. Mom's been updating the will." The words landed soft, but they rippled out, charging the air. Nate paused mid-bite, his fork hovering, eyes flicking between us. Mom set her utensils down with a deliberate clink, folding her hands in her lap. "Yes, with your father gone, it's time to get things in order, ensure everything goes to those who deserve it. Who've contributed." Contributed. The word hung there, sharp as a thorn. I set my fork down too, the metal cool against my fingers, and met her gaze. "What does that mean exactly?" My tone was measured, but inside the flame leaped, fed by years of unspoken grievances. Ethan leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest, the chair creaking under his weight. "It means we're thinking practically. You've got your thing going on, the art stuff, but Claire's building a practice, Nate's got ventures, and I'm handling the legal side. We need to protect the assets for those invested in the family legacy." Legacy. As if my quiet support didn't count. I felt my cheeks heat, but I kept my expression neutral, tracing the grain of the table with my fingertip. "And I'm not part of that?" Mom sighed, a long theatrical exhale, her shoulders rising and falling. "Olivia, let's be honest, you've always marched to your own drum. We appreciate that, but it's led you astray. No stable job, no family of your own. We're concerned." Concerned. The euphemism stung, and I saw Claire nod subtly, her earrings catching the light as she tilted her head. "It's not about cutting you out entirely," she added, her voice soothing, like talking to a patient. "Just reallocating. Maybe a small trust, something to help you get on your feet." On my feet. As if I wasn't already standing tall on ground I'd built myself. Nate chimed in, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Yeah, sis, no hard feelings, but you've got to admit, you're not exactly pulling your weight here." Pulling my weight. The irony burned, but I held it in, my lips pressing into a thin line. "I've been contributing more than you know." The words escaped before I could stop them, a crack in my armor. Ethan chuckled, low and dismissive, shaking his head. "Come on, Liv, bringing apps doesn't count as contribution." He gestured to the ceviche bowl, now half empty but barely touched by them. Mom waved a hand, dismissing my comment. "This isn't about tonight, it's about the long term. We've decided after discussion that the bulk will go to your siblings. You'll get enough to pursue your interests, but no more handouts. It's time you stood on your own." Handouts. My vision narrowed, the edges blurring as blood rushed in my ears. I gripped the table edge, the wood biting into my skin, grounding me. "Handouts? Is that what you call it?" My voice rose slightly, cracking the polite veneer. Claire reached across, her hand hovering near mine but not touching. "Don't get upset, we're doing this out of love. To motivate you." Motivate, as if their disdain hadn't already driven me to build an empire. Nate snickered. "Yeah, maybe now you'll get a real job, no more playing artist." Playing. The diminutive hit like a slap, and I felt my breath hitch. Mom's expression hardened, her eyes narrowing. "Olivia, don't make a scene. This is final. As of now, consider yourself independent. No more relying on us." Independent. The word twisted the knife. They had no idea how independent I'd been, how I'd propped them up. I stared at her, the room shrinking to just us, the clatter of utensils fading. "You think I've been relying on you?" I asked, my voice low, trembling with restrained fury. Ethan rolled his eyes, sipping his wine again. "Well, yeah, who do you think covered your gaps all these years? Family money." "Family money? Lies, it was my money, funneled back to them in secret." The escalation peaked as Mom leaned forward, her voice dropping to a hiss. "Enough. You've always been the problem child, the most useless one. It's time you accepted it and moved on." Useless. The word exploded in my mind, shattering the last restraint. My chair scraped back as I stood, hands flat on the table, knuckles white. "Useless? After everything I've done?" They stared, forks paused, confusion flickering. But Mom doubled down. "What have you done, Olivia? Nothing. This conversation is over. You're disowned from the will, officially." Disowned. The final verdict, delivered cold, her face unyielding. I sank back into my seat, not in defeat but in calculation, the flame now ablaze. The room spun slightly but I focused on their faces, smug, pitying, oblivious. This was the breaking point, the push I'd needed. No more secrets. No more secrets. That resolve hardened in my chest like steel as I hovered there, half standing, the chair legs scraping the floor with a finality that mirrored the verdict Mom had just dropped. The word disowned echoed in the silence that followed, broken only by the faint tick of the grandfather clock in the hall, each second stretching like a taut wire. My family's faces were a tableau of smug certainty. Mom's chin lifted in righteous authority, Ethan's smirk frozen in place, Claire's eyes averted to her plate where she pushed a pea around with her fork, and Nate's casual lean back in his chair, arms crossed as if this was just another family chat. I opened my mouth, the words of revelation bubbling up, about the money, the support, the empire. But before they could spill, my phone vibrated in my pocket, an insistent buzz that cut through the tension like a knife. I froze, hand instinctively reaching for it, the cool glass screen against my palm grounding me in the moment. The caller ID flashed. Jenna, my studio manager. Perfect timing, or the worst, I couldn't decide. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the decline button, but something, defiance maybe, made me swipe accept instead. "I have to take this," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through me. Mom's eyes widened, her napkin crumpling in her fist. "Now? We're in the middle of—" But I turned away slightly, pressing the phone to my ear, the cordless warmth a contrast to the chill in the room. "Olivia," Jenna's voice came through, excited and breathless. "The merger's a go, they just signed off. 5 million, plus equity. We're set. This is huge." Her words hit me like a wave, washing away the last shreds of doubt. I glanced back at the table where confusion rippled across their faces. Ethan's brow furrowed. Claire tilted her head, Nate sat up straighter, and Mom's mouth tightened into a line. I lowered the phone slightly, not ending the call, letting Jenna's enthusiasm leak out faintly into the air. 5 million? I repeated, loud enough for them to hear, my eyes locking on Mom's. "The acquisition of my studio?" Jenna laughed on the line. "Yes, Pixel Pulse is about to explode. You've built something incredible here, the team's freaking out, in a good way." I nodded, even though she couldn't see, my free hand gripping the back of the chair, knuckles whitening against the upholstered fabric. The revelation wasn't just the number, it was the scale. The proof that my hobby had outgrown their narrow definitions. Mom's fork clattered to her plate, the sound sharp and unintended, her hand flying to her mouth. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice pitching higher, losing its composed edge. I held up a finger, signaling wait, and turned my full attention back to the call, pacing a few steps away from the table toward the window, where snowflakes danced outside against the darkening sky. "Details, Jenna. Walk me through it." She dove in, her words tumbling out. The contract clauses, the transition timeline, how my designs would integrate into their global platform. I listened, interjecting with questions. "And the non-compete? 2 years?" My voice projecting confidence I'd honed in boardrooms, not this dining room. Each affirmation from her built the picture. Pixel Pulse wasn't just successful, it was a powerhouse, sought after, valuable. My heart raced, not from fear now, but from the thrill of it all coming to light at this precise humiliating nadir. Ethan's chair creaked as he shifted, whispering to Claire, "Is she serious?" Nate pulled out his own phone, fingers tapping rapidly, probably Googling my studio name, his eyes widening as results loaded. Mom stood abruptly, her chair pushing back with a screech, napkin fluttering to the floor like a white flag. "Olivia, hang up, this is ridiculous, you're making things up to save face." Her words were meant to dismiss, but her voice wavered, hands clasping together in front of her, fingers twisting. I ignored her, focusing on Jenna. "Email me the signed docs, I'll review tonight." As she confirmed, I felt the shift. The power tilting, the humiliation inverting. This call wasn't planned, it was serendipity, the universe handing me the ammunition right when their contempt peaked. Claire reached for her water glass, taking a sip, her hand unsteady, the ice clinking softly. "A merger? Like for real?" she murmured, more to herself, her perfect facade cracking. Ending the call with a quick, "Thanks, Jenna, celebrate for me," I slipped the phone back into my pocket, the weight of it now a talisman. Turning back, I faced them, the room's atmosphere charged, the turkey congealing on plates forgotten. Mom's face had paled, her lips parting and closing like a fish out of water. "Explain yourself," she finally managed, sinking back into her seat, the authority drained. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on the table, violating Mom's usual etiquette rule without notice. "Pixel Pulse? That's yours? I thought it was just freelance." His tone mixed skepticism and dawning realization, his fingers drumming a nervous rhythm. Nate held up his phone screen. "Holy, it's legit, articles everywhere, awards, clients, how did we not know?" I stood there, arms at my sides, feeling the carpet fibers under my socks. I'd removed my heels earlier for comfort, a small act now feeling like shedding constraints. "Because I didn't tell you, you never asked, never cared." The words came calm, but inside triumph surged, mingling with the residual hurt. This external validation, timed impeccably, peeled back the layers of their judgment, exposing the truth. My success dwarfed their imagined superiority. Claire's eyes met mine, wide with something like regret, her fork twirling absently in the potatoes. "5 million, that's incredible, Liv." Her compliment, the first genuine one in years, hung awkward, but it fueled me. The moment stretched, their stunned silence a balm on old wounds. Mom recovered slightly, straightening her posture. "Well, that's unexpected, but it doesn't change the will, or your place." Her defiance was brittle and I saw the crack. The fear that this revelation upended everything. The call had changed it all, revealing not just the scale, but my independence, my worth. No more hiding, the blaze was uncontainable now. The blaze roared unchecked now, fueled by Mom's brittle defiance, her words, "It doesn't change the will," hanging in the air like a challenge I was finally ready to meet head-on. I stood there by the window, the phone still warm in my pocket from the call, feeling the carpet shift slightly under my weight as I turned fully to face them. The dining room light cast long shadows across the table, highlighting the congealed gravy and abandoned forks, a still life of interrupted complacency. Ethan's face had lost its smirk, replaced by a furrowed brow as he set his wine glass down with a trembling clink, the red liquid sloshing but not spilling. "Wait, hold on," he said, his voice cracking the silence, hands spreading palm up on the table as if pleading for reason. "Pixel Pulse, that's the studio that's been in the news? The one with the viral campaigns? You're saying that's yours?" His eyes darted to his phone, which he'd grabbed during the call, screen glowing with search results he scrolled through frantically, thumb swiping up in jerky motions. I didn't answer immediately, letting the question linger, my arms crossing over my chest, the fabric of my blouse pulling taut. Claire leaned forward, her chair creaking softly, fingers interlacing tightly in her lap. "Liv, we had no idea. Why didn't you tell us?" Her tone aimed for supportive, but it wavered, her gaze flicking to Mom for guidance, earrings swaying like pendulums. Nate, usually the quickest with a quip, sat mute, his phone clutched in both hands, mouth agape as he read aloud in a whisper. "Founded 5 years ago, 7-figure revenue, acquisition rumors confirmed." Mom remained seated, but her posture had stiffened, hands clasped so hard her knuckles blanched white against the tablecloth. "This changes nothing," she repeated, but softer, her eyes narrowing as if to convince herself, lips pursing into a thin line. The scramble began in earnest then, a frantic dance of denial and repositioning. Ethan pushed back from the table, standing with a scrape of his chair, pacing a short path behind his seat, one hand running through his hair, tugging at the roots. Okay, if this is real, and it seems like it is, then congrats, sis, seriously, but the will, We can revisit that, right, Mom? He looked to her, desperation edging his voice, his free hand gesturing vaguely toward me, as if including me now could erase the earlier verdict. Claire nodded vigorously, uncrossing her legs and recrossing them, her foot tapping an anxious rhythm under the table. Absolutely. We were just worried, thinking you needed help. But this is amazing. You're successful. The word came out forced, her smile too wide, teeth flashing unnaturally as she reached for her water glass again, taking a gulp that bobbed her throat. Nate chimed in, snapping out of his stupor, leaning forward with elbows on the table, another breach of Mom's rules, unnoticed in the chaos. Dude, $5 million? That's insane. Hey, maybe you can invest in my next thing. We've got family ties, right? His grin was opportunistic, eyes lighting up as he pocketed his phone, fingers drumming the wood. Mom finally unclasped her hands, one rising to adjust her necklace, the chain twisting under her fingers. Yes, well, perhaps we were hasty. Family supports family. Olivia, sit down. Let's discuss this properly. Her voice strained for authority, but it cracked on properly, her gaze avoiding mine, landing instead on the turkey carcass, as if it held answers. I remained standing, uncrossing my arms slowly, feeling the cool air on my skin where the blouse had creased. This was the hypocrisy I'd endured for years, their sudden pivot, not from genuine pride but from greed and fear of losing control. Calm settled over me like a cloak, my breathing even, pulse steady despite the adrenaline. Discuss, I echoed, my voice level, stepping closer to the table, my shadow falling across their plates. Now you want to discuss? After calling me useless? After disowning me 5 minutes ago? Ethan stopped pacing, his hand dropping to his side, fingers flexing open and closed. Come on, Liv, we didn't know. Cut us some slack. Slack. As if I hadn't given them miles of it. I shook my head, a small, deliberate motion, my hair brushing my shoulders. No, you knew enough to belittle me every chance you got. But let's be clear about something else. I paused, letting the words build, my eyes sweeping over each of them. Ethan's averted gaze, Claire's fidgeting hands now twisting her napkin, Nate's forced smile fading, Mom's rigid posture. That success, the studio, the merger, it's not just mine, it's what kept all of you afloat. Confusion rippled again, Ethan tilting his head. What do you mean? I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone, unlocking it with a swipe, the screen illuminating my face. The money. The anonymous investments, the bonuses, the gifts that covered your shortfalls. That was me. All me. The exposure unfolded methodically, my voice calm as I detailed it, scrolling through bank app screenshots I'd prepared in secret months ago, just in case. Ethan, your mortgage payments last year when that case fell through? $15,000 from me, wired as consulting refund. He blanched, sinking back into his chair, hand covering his mouth. Claire, those student loan chunks that mysteriously vanished? $20,000 over 2 years, labeled scholarship adjustment. She gasped, napkin dropping to her lap, eyes welling. Nate, every failed startup bailout, $30,000 total, funneled as angel investor funds. He slumped, staring at his hands. And Mom, the car, the house repairs, your retirement supplements? $25,000, disguised as Dad's old accounts. She clutched the table edge, face ashen, whispering, How? Why? Why? Because I thought it would make you see me, value me, but it didn't. You took it and called me useless. The words flowed without rage, just truth, each one landing like a stone in still water, rippling their facades. Ethan stammered, We appreciate it now. Let's fix this. Claire nodded, tears spilling. Please, Liv, we're family. Nate muttered, Yeah, thanks, really. Mom reached out, hand trembling. Olivia, stay, we can change. But I stepped back, phone away, the rejection final. No, your hypocrisy ends here. You only want me now because of what I have, not who I am. I turned, grabbing my coat from the hall rack, the fabric heavy as I shrugged it on, buttons fastening with steady clicks. They scrambled verbally, pleas overlapping, chairs scraping as they half rose. But I walked to the door, hand on the knob, twisting it open to the cold night air. Goodbye, I said, stepping out, the door clicking shut behind me, a powerful punctuation to my exit. The driveway gravel crunched underfoot, car door slamming, engine roaring to life. As I drove away, their lights shrinking in the rear view, freedom tasted sharp and sweet. Freedom tasted sharp and sweet, lingering on my tongue like the first sip of coffee after a sleepless night, as I navigated the snow-slicked roads away from the house, the rearview mirror showing only darkness where their porch light faded. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles still pale from the tension, but as miles stretched between us, a lightness seeped in, unburdening my shoulders. The merger call replayed in my mind, Jenna's excitement a counterpoint to their pleas, but I pushed it aside. No work tonight. Instead, I craved something real, something untouched by their poison. My phone, tossed on the passenger seat, it lit up with a text from my best friend Mia. "Hey, we're all at the loft. Come join? Eggnog and bad movies." The loft, her place, a cozy converted warehouse where our group gathered for holidays when family felt too heavy. I typed back one-handed at a red light, fingers tapping quickly. "On my way. Rough night." Her reply was instant. "Doors open. Hugs ready." The drive took 20 minutes, the city streets quieter than usual, holiday lights blurring through the windshield wipers, sweeping away flurries. I parked in the gravel lot behind the building, the engine ticking as it cooled, and grabbed my bag, slinging it over my shoulder with a soft thud against my coat. The cold bit deeper here, away from suburban warmth, but I welcomed it. Each breath visible, like exhales of relief. Climbing the metal stairs to the second floor, the clang of my heels echoed, mingling with muffled laughter seeping under the door. I knocked lightly, and it swung open to Mia's grinning face, her curly hair tied back, an ugly Christmas sweater emblazoned with dancing reindeer hugging her frame. "Liv, get in here before you freeze." She pulled me into a bear hug, her arms strong and scented with vanilla from baking, the embrace melting the last ice in my veins. Inside, the loft was alive with warmth that didn't feel forced. Exposed brick walls draped in fairy lights, a mismatched couch piled with blankets, and a fake tree overloaded with handmade ornaments. The air smelled of cinnamon cookies and mulled wine simmering on a hot plate. My allies, my chosen family, were scattered around. Mia's partner, Alex, lounging on the floor with a guitar, strumming soft chords. Jamal, my studio's lead developer and confidant, mixing drinks at the makeshift bar. Sarah, a fellow designer I'd met at a conference years ago, curled up with a book but looking up with a wave. And Theo, the quiet marketer who'd become like a brother, fiddling with the projector for movie night. No judgments here, no hierarchies, just people who'd seen my struggles and celebrated my wins without strings. Mia steered me to the couch, pressing a mug of mulled wine into my hands, the ceramic hot against my palms, steam curling up with hints of clove. "You look like you survived a war zone. Family dinner?" I nodded, sinking into the cushions, the fabric soft and worn, legs tucking under me as I blew on the drink. Worse. They finally pushed too far. The group quieted subtly, Alex setting the guitar aside with a gentle clunk, Jamal sliding over a plate of cookies, his hand lingering on my shoulder in solidarity. Sarah closed her book, leaning in. "Spill if you want, we're here." No pressure, just space. That was the difference. I took a sip, the wine warm and spiced, coating my throat, then set the mug down on the coffee table, the wood scarred from years of gatherings. I started slow, voice steady but raw, recounting the dinner's escalation, the condescending arrivals, the will announcement, Mom's cutting, useless verdict. My fingers traced the mug's handle as I spoke, round and round, a soothing loop. Then the call came, Jenna confirming the merger, 5 million. Gasps rippled through the room, but not of shock at the number. They knew about Pixel Pulse, had been there for the late nights, the breakthroughs. Jamal whooped, raising his glass. "Hell yeah, that's my boss." Theo smiled quietly, nodding. "Deserved." Mia squeezed my knee, her touch grounding. "And them? How'd they take it?" I continued, detailing the exposure, the anonymous supports I'd provided, listing the amounts like tallying scores. Ethan's mortgage, Claire's loans, Nate's bailouts, Mom's cushions. As I spoke, Alex's eyes widened, strumming a low note absent-mindedly. "Wait, you've been bankrolling them? While they trash-talked you?" Sarah shook her head, book forgotten in her lap. "That's messed up. Classic hypocrisy." I nodded, the words flowing easier here without defense. When I laid it out, they scrambled. Sudden congrats, offers to revisit the will, but it was too late. I walked out. Mia's hand tightened on my knee. "Good for you, about time." The contrast hit me then, sharp as the dinner's chill versus this warmth. There, every word was a minefield, gestures calculated to diminish. Here, listening was active, support unconditional. Jamal passed me a cookie, chocolate chips still gooey, and I bit in, crumbs falling to my lap, brushing them away with a laugh. "You guys?" You've always had my back. Remember when we pulled that all-nighter for the big pitch? Theo chuckled, leaning against the wall, arms crossed loosely. How could I forget? You had us redesigning logos at 3 a.m., but we nailed it, Sarah added, and celebrated with greasy breakfast at dawn. That's family, chosen, not forced. We shifted to lighter talk, but the genuine moment deepened, wrapping around us like the blankets. Alex picked up the guitar again, playing a soft rendition of Silent Night, his fingers plucking strings with ease. Mia refilled my mug, her movements fluid, no expectations. You're glowing, Liv, freer. I felt it. The toxic weight lifted, replaced by this authenticity. No facades here. Jamal shared his own family woes, Sarah her triumphs, each story met with nods, not judgments. As the movie started, some cheesy holiday flick, the projector humming to life, I nestled deeper, head on Mia's shoulder, her arm draping casually. Laughter bubbled at the bad acting, popcorn passed hand to hand, kernels spilling without scolds. In that room, the biological bonds felt distant, brittle, these chosen ones resilient and real. My phone buzzed once, Ethan's name flashing, but I silenced it, tucking it away. Here I was seen, valued for me, not my wallet. The evening stretched, warm and unhurried, a balm that healed what the dinner had torn. The evening at Mia's loft stretched into the early hours, a gentle unwind that left me recharged, the laughter and shared stories a shield against the raw edges of the dinner's fallout. As I drove home through the quiet streets, snowflakes catching in my headlights like fleeting stars, my phone stayed silent. No more buzzes from Ethan or anyone else. They'd scrambled at the door, but now? Radio silence, perhaps digesting the wreckage I'd left behind. I unlocked my apartment door with a soft click, the loft's modern lines welcoming me back. High ceilings, minimalist furniture, a wall of windows overlooking the city that never judged. Dropping my keys on the console table, the metal jingling faintly, I shrugged off my coat, hanging it with deliberate care, each hook a small act of reclaiming normalcy. But as I sank onto the couch, legs drawn up, the adrenaline ebbed, leaving space for the aftermath to creep in. Texts would come, calls, maybe even visits. I needed boundaries, solid ones, like the fortress I'd built around Pixel Pulse. Morning light filtered through the blinds, slanting across the floor in golden strips, as I brewed coffee, the machine gurgling steadily, aroma filling the space. My phone, charged overnight on the nightstand, showed notifications, missed calls from Mom, voicemails from Claire, texts from Ethan and Nate. I sipped the hot brew, mug warming my hands, steam fogging my view slightly, and listened to the first voicemail. Claire's voice tentative. Liv, please call back, we need to talk, I'm sorry. Sorry. The word rang hollow after years of dismissal. Ethan's text, hey sis, let's meet up, clear the air. Nate's, that was intense, drinks on me? Mom's call log showed 3 attempts, no message left, typical, expecting me to chase. I set the mug down with a thunk on the counter, fingers drumming the granite, cool and smooth. No knee-jerk replies, this time I'd dictate the terms. I moved to my home office, like a corner nook with dual monitors and sketches pinned to a corkboard, remnants of late-night inspirations. Sitting in the ergonomic chair, wheels rolling slightly on the hardwood, I opened my laptop, the screen blooming to life. First, a draft email. No, too formal. Texts were too casual for this weight. I opted for a group message, fingers hovering over the keys before typing. I need space. Don't contact me until I'm ready. Respect that, or it's permanent. Send. The whoosh sound was satisfying, a digital door slamming. My shoulders relaxed a fraction, but I knew it wouldn't hold without enforcement. Claire replied almost instantly. Understood. Take your time. Ethan's. Okay, but soon? I didn't respond, pocketing the phone, the weight a reminder to stay firm. The day unfolded in quiet productivity, reviewing the merger docs Jenna had emailed, my eyes scanning clauses, pen tapping the desk as I noted questions. But interruptions came, a knock at the door mid-afternoon. Peering through the peephole, Ethan's face distorted in the fisheye lens, tie askew, looking harried. My heart skipped, but I didn't open. Instead I texted. Not now, go home. He knocked again, softer, then sighed audibly, footsteps retreating down the hall. Victory. Small but crucial. Later, Nate showed up unannounced, bearing a coffee carrier, 2 lattes, peace offering. I watched from the window as he paced the stoop, phone in hand, texting, "Come on, Liv, let's hash it out." I replied, "Boundaries mean no drop-ins. Leave." He set the coffees down, shoulders slumping, and walked away. the cup steaming in the cold. Mom was trickier. She called again that evening as I chopped vegetables for a solo dinner, knife thudding rhythmically against the cutting board. I let it ring, the trill echoing off the kitchen tiles until voicemail. Listening later, her voice cracked. "Olivia, this is your mother. We must discuss. Come over tomorrow." Command, not request. I deleted it, hands steady as I sautéed onions, the sizzle filling the silence. No more obeying summons. Instead, I blocked their numbers temporarily, a digital moat, giving myself breathing room. The phone went quiet, blissfully so, and I ate at the counter, fork scraping the plate, tasting freedom in each bite. But boundaries weren't just external, I fortified internally too. Journaling that night, pen scratching paper in a leather-bound notebook I'd bought on a whim, I listed rules. No financial aid, ever again. Communication on my terms, scheduled calls, neutral ground. No more secrets, honesty or nothing. My handwriting looped decisively, each word a brick in the wall. Mia texted, "How's the aftermath?" I replied, "Building walls feels good." Her thumbs up emoji glowed, a simple affirmation. The next few days tested those walls. Claire emailed, "Professional address, subject, family meeting, proposing a coffee shop rendezvous." I considered, fingers poised over the keyboard, then replied, "Not yet. When I say where I choose." She didn't push. Ethan tried LinkedIn of all places, messaging about networking opportunities. I ignored, focusing on work, conference calls with the acquiring firm, my voice confident as I negotiated terms, hand gesturing emphatically though alone. Nate sent a Venmo request, jokingly for emotional damages, which I declined with a note, "Not funny, stop." The attempts tapered, their desperation fading into reluctant acceptance. A week in, Mom showed up at my building, buzzing the intercom persistently. I watched on the security app, her figure bundled in a coat pacing the lobby. "Olivia, let me up," her voice crackled through the speaker. I pressed talk. "No. Go home. We'll talk when I'm ready," she argued, voice rising, but the doorman intervened, escorting her out gently. I leaned against the wall, breath shaky but resolved, the cool paint soothing my back. That night I unblocked them, sending a unified message. Rules: no uninvited visits, no money talks, respect my success without claiming it, break them and contact ends. Responses trickled. Claire's agreed, Ethan's fine, Nate's, got it, Mom's, if that's what you need. Enforcement became routine, declining invites, redirecting conversations. When Ethan called about advice on a case, I cut in, "Not my lane, boundaries." He hung up frustrated but complied. Slowly, the new dynamic settled, my peace prioritized, work flourished, the merger closed, my bank account swelling, but more, my self-worth solidified. Late one evening, staring out the window at twinkling lights, mug in hand, I realized these boundaries weren't walls to isolate but gates I controlled. The aftermath wasn't chaos, it was reconstruction on my terms. Reconstruction on my terms meant more than just setting boundaries. It meant taking the shattered pieces of my identity, the ones tied to that family name, and rebuilding them into something unbreakable, something that honored me first. Weeks after the dinner, with the merger finalized and Pixel Pulse integrated into the larger firm, I found myself with not just financial freedom, but time, precious hours unclaimed by the grind of proving myself. I sat in my new office, a corner suite in the acquiring company's building, the city skyline stretching out beyond the glass walls like an invitation to expand. My desk was cluttered with sketches, notepads filled with ideas that had simmered during those lonely startup years. One idea kept surfacing: using my platform to uplift others like me, the dreamers dismissed by their worlds. It wasn't revenge, it was redirection, channeling the pain into purpose. That morning, as sunlight glinted off the polished surface of my desk, I decided to launch an initiative, a mentorship program for young graphic designers from underserved backgrounds. I'd call it Pulse Forward, reclaiming Johnson not as a burden, but as a banner for change. I started small, fingers tapping the keyboard as I drafted the proposal, the keys clicking rhythmically, each press a step away from the past. The program would offer scholarships, workshops, and internships at the studio, now backed by the merger's resources. I envisioned kids like I once was, hunched over sketchbooks in dim rooms, doubting their spark. My hands paused over the keys, remembering my own early days, the rejection letters from practical jobs, the family dinners where my passion was a punchline. This would be my legacy, independent of them. I emailed the board, attaching mock-ups I'd designed late last night, vibrant logos, a website wireframe. "Let's make impact," I wrote, hitting send with a satisfying whoosh. The reply came quick. "Approved. Let's discuss details." Excitement buzzed, but I tempered it, focusing on the why. Not for acclaim, but for the ripple effect. The launch event coalesced over the next month, but I zeroed in on one pivotal day. The first workshop set up at a community center downtown, a space I'd rented with merger funds. I arrived early, the sun barely up, unlocking the door with a key that felt symbolic, heavy with possibility. The room was bare. Folding tables, stackable chairs, whiteboards on wheels. I pushed the tables into a circle, the legs scraping linoleum with echoing protests, arranging them for collaboration, not hierarchy. Unpacking boxes from my car, laptops donated by partners, sketch pads, markers, the cardboard rustling as I slit tape with a box cutter, blade glinting. Each item placed deliberately, software tutorials printed and stacked neatly, their edges aligned by my meticulous hands. I wiped sweat from my brow with my sleeve, the cotton soft against my skin, surveying the setup. This was mine, Olivia Johnson's mark on the world. Participants trickled in around noon, 15 young adults aged 18 to 25, selected from applications I'd reviewed personally. Their faces mirrored my past. Hesitant eyes, backpacks slung low, outfits pieced together with care but limited means. Maria, a 20-year-old with vibrant tattoos peeking from her sleeves, clutched a worn portfolio. "Is this really free?" she asked, voice soft, fingers twisting the strap. I nodded, handing her a name tag, the sticky back peeling with a rip. "Absolutely, we're here to build skills, no strings." Jamal from my team arrived then, setting up projectors, cords snaking across the floor like veins. He clapped me on the back. "Boss, this is gonna change lives." His grin was genuine, no hidden agendas. As the group settled, I stood at the front, not behind a podium, but in the circle's open space, hands clasped loosely. "Welcome to Pulse Forward," I began, voice steady, projecting warmth I'd practiced in the mirror that morning. "I'm Olivia Johnson, and I started this because I know what it's like to be told your dreams don't count." Murmurs of agreement rippled, heads nodding, one guy in the back uncrossing his arms. I shared my story, not the full family drama, but the essence, the dismissals, the secret hustle, the breakthrough. "My name used to feel like a weight," I said, pacing slowly, shoes soft on the floor. "Now, it's a tool for lifting others." I gestured to the supplies. "Today, we'll design personal brands. What makes you unique?" The session dove in, hands reaching for markers, the caps popping like starting guns. I circulated, kneeling beside chairs, my knees pressing into the hard floor. At Maria's table, she sketched a logo for her freelance gig, bold lines, colors clashing intentionally. "It's chaotic, like my life," she explained, pencil hovering. I tilted my head, studying it. "Own that chaos. Add contrast." My finger traced the paper, not touching, guiding. She adjusted, eyes lighting up as it clicked. Across the room, a quiet teen named Kai struggled with software, mouse clicking erratically. I sat beside him, our chairs close, my hand over his on the mouse, gentle, not controlling. "Drag like this," I demonstrated, the cursor smoothing across the screen. His tension eased, a small smile breaking. "Thanks, Miss Johnson." Miss Johnson, respectful, earned. Hours blurred, the room filling with chatter. Laughter at failed attempts, high fives for wins. I fetched water bottles from the cooler, plastic crinkling, passing them out, my arms aching slightly from the earlier setup. One participant, Lena, shared during a break, "My family thinks art's a waste. Sound familiar?" I nodded, leaning against a table, arms crossed casually. "Too familiar. But you define your value." Her eyes met mine. Determined. By end, portfolios bulged with new work. Faces glowed with accomplishment. I wrapped up, standing again. "This is just the start. Keep creating." The Johnson name now stands for possibility. Packing up alone after they left, folding chairs with metallic clangs, rolling cords into neat coils, I felt the impact settle. This wasn't about erasing my family, it was transcending them. The community center's echoey quiet amplified my thoughts. Dad would have been proud maybe, but this was for me. Driving home, hands loose on the wheel, radio humming softly, I realized reclaiming the legacy meant forging it anew. Positive, inclusive, mine. Pulse Forward wasn't a program, it was my rebirth. True peace didn't come in a rush, like the merger's closing or the workshop's success. It settled gradually, like dust after a storm, in the quiet moments where I confronted the void left by the family's estrangement. Months had passed since that Christmas dinner. The merger funds invested wisely, Pulse Forward gaining traction with more workshops and even a small grant from a design foundation. But externally thriving didn't erase the internal echo. The useless label that had burrowed deep, resurfacing in unguarded times. One evening, as summer faded into autumn, I found myself alone on my apartment's balcony, the city hum below a distant murmur. The air carried a crisp edge, leaves rustling in the wind, and I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, the wool scratching softly against my skin. A mug of chamomile tea steamed in my hands, the herbal scent calming, as I stared at the horizon where buildings met sky. This was the reflection I'd avoided, the final accounting of my worth, untethered from their validation. I set the mug down on the small iron table, the ceramic clinking gently, and pulled out my journal from the side pocket of the chair cushion where I'd tucked it earlier. The pages were worn, filled with scribbled thoughts from the aftermath. Lists of boundaries, sketches of program ideas, even unsent letters to Mom venting the hurt. Flipping to a blank page, the paper smooth under my fingertips, I uncapped a pen, the click echoing in the stillness. "What now?" I wrote, the ink flowing dark and even. The question stared back, demanding honesty. For years, my drive had been reactive, proving them wrong, secretly supporting to buy affection. But with the exposure, the boundaries, the new legacy, what remained? I tapped the pen against my teeth, the plastic cool, thinking back to the dinner's peak. Mom's face crumpling as I listed the financial truths, Ethan's stammered pleas, Claire's tears, Nate's silence. It satisfied then, a cathartic release, but now, it felt like a closed chapter, not the whole book. Leaning back, the chair creaking under my weight, I closed my eyes, breathing deeply, the blanket slipping slightly down one arm. Memories surfaced unbidden. Childhood Christmases where I was sidelined, my drawings dismissed while siblings' report cards were praised, the apartment nights building pixel pulse, loneliness my companion, the loft gathering with friends, their acceptance a mirror to what family should be. Each piece fit into a mosaic. My worth wasn't in the money I'd given or the success I'd hidden, it was in the resilience to build despite dismissal. The choice to give without expectation, the courage to walk away. I opened my eyes, the city lights twinkling like stars brought low, and wrote, "My value is internal, it always was." The words landed solid, a truth I'd circled but never claimed. But claiming it meant living it. The next day I tested this piece in action. A text from Claire pinged during a Pulse Forward meeting, reviewing applicant portfolios around a conference table, markers squeaking on whiteboards as we brainstormed. "Can we talk? Miss you." Her words tugged, a familiar guilt rising, but I paused, hand hovering over the phone, fingers curling back. Instead of replying immediately, I set it face down, the screen's glow muffled, and refocused on the group. "This one's got potential," I said, pointing to a sketch of urban murals. My voice steady. The meeting flowed, ideas bouncing, laughter punctuating critiques. No toxicity, just growth. After, in the hallway, heels clicking on tile, I responded, "Not ready yet. Working on me." Send. No elaboration, no apology. Peace meant prioritizing my healing. Evenings evolved into rituals of self-validation. I'd cook elaborate meals, chopping garlic with precise knife strokes, the aroma filling the kitchen, sizzling in olive oil, eating slowly at the table, savoring each bite without distraction. No more eating over the sink, rushing to work. I'd sketch for fun, not deadlines, charcoal smudging my fingers black, wiping them on a rag with satisfaction at the abstract shapes emerging. Friends noticed. Mia commented during a coffee meetup, stirring her latte with a spoon clinking the cup. "You seem settled." I nodded, tracing the foam pattern. "I am," realizing I don't need their approval to matter. The family reached out sporadically. Ethan's email about a neutral lunch, Nate's meme attempting humor, Mom's card in the mail, handwriting shaky, "Thinking of you." I read them without the old ache, folding the card neatly, placing it in a drawer with a soft thud. Responses were measured, appreciate it, but space still needed. No malice, just truth. Pulse Forward became my anchor, mentoring sessions where I'd listen to stories mirroring mine, families doubting dreams, and advise, "Your worth isn't their opinion." Saying it reinforced it for me, each word a brick in my internal foundation. One night, rain pattering against the windows like gentle applause, I sat on the couch, legs crossed, a book open but unread in my lap. The lamp cast a warm glow, shadows dancing on walls adorned with my own prints, bold designs from early days. I closed the book with a soft thump, leaning head back, eyes on the ceiling fan's lazy spin. The journey from marginalized child to secret supporter to breaker of facades to builder of boundaries and legacies culminated here. Peace in solitude, joy in chosen connections, fulfillment in impact. My worth was internal, a quiet flame that no insult could extinguish. I smiled faintly, the expression pulling at my cheeks, and whispered to the empty room, "You've got this, Olivia." As months turned, relationships hinted at mending, not full reconciliation, but tentative honesty. A call with Claire, scheduled on my terms, her voice hesitant. "I see now how we hurt you." My reply calm, "Good, let's build from there." No rush, no erasure of past, just forward on equal ground. The estrangement had been the crisis, but the rebuild? It empowered me, claiming value independent of validation. In that realization, true peace bloomed, internal, unshakable, mine. Have you ever felt like your family's words defined you, only to realize your true worth comes from within? That's the heart of my story. The journey from being labeled useless to embracing self-validation. It wasn't easy. Exposing the secrets and setting boundaries shattered our facade, but it led to honesty and respect we never had before. Now, with Pulse Forward thriving and my relationships rebuilding on my terms, I've found peace that's deeper than any external success. If this resonates, I want to hear from you. Have you had a moment where you stood up to family expectations and claimed your value? Share your stories in the comments below. It could inspire someone else going through the same. Let's build a community of empowerment right here. So what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Drop a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life tales of triumph and transformation. Remember, your worth isn't up for debate. It's yours to own. Keep shining.